Hey Eurovision fans, it's Tom coming to you from Istanbul and I'm back for another Eurovision analysis video. Today we're going to be talking about the hot mess that is Romania in Eurovision. Things have really gone downhill for them in recent years. We're going to look at the interview that Theodor did with the Watcher on YouTube, doing a little bit of an expose about the whole system. We're going to look at what he said and what insight this gives us into what's going wrong for Romania recently. Then we're going to look back at Romania's golden days and discuss what do they need to do to get back on track. So let's kiki. Okay, so apologies that this video has taken so long. Honestly, I'm going to show you the brainstorm tree that I did for this episode just to show you how much I had to cover to try and get everything in. Started by initially reviewing Theodor's interview with the Watcher, and then I thought I'd go a little bit bigger. Started getting a little bit too big, as you can see here. I'll leave some chapters in the time bar in case you want to skip to a particular part. I've done my best to make this as accurate as possible. I'm not purposefully saying anything wrong, and sometimes I misunderstand things, etc. So yeah, if I'm saying anything wrong, I'll leave a pinned comment down below where I'll leave the links to the video and also any corrections as well. All right, let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about the interview. So Theodor Andrei, in case you don't know, was a representative for Romania in Eurovision this year. He was in semi-final number 2 and came second last. He got 0 points. The whole thing, yeah, just didn't go particularly well. He's done an interview with someone called The Watcher, who has a YouTube channel. This interview was around an hour long. It did have subtitles. First of all, I gotta give a big shout out to The Watcher. Thank you for doing the interview, for organizing it, doing all the subtitles, etc. That's a lot of work. I know firsthand how long it takes to make a video that's an hour long. That is a lot of editing and nightmare stuff. So I do definitely appreciate him for that. If you want to watch it yourself, I'll leave a link in the pinned comment. I'll also leave a link to Lucy's thread. So Lucy is a girl on Twitter who is a Theodor stan, and she's summarized the entire interview into tweets. So if you want to go read that yourself instead of watching the full 1 hour video, you can also go watch that. I'll leave a link in the pinned comment as well. Look, I'm gonna be honest, this was pretty painful to watch. Firstly, there are subtitles, but it's not clear who's speaking when with the subtitles. So for example, they aren't colored, one color for Theodor and one color for the Watcher. And also there's no like Theodor colon what he says. So there's a lot of times in the video when I wasn't sure who was saying what. As for the host, this guy, the Watcher, he's more of a talker than a watcher. He interrupted Theodor so much. Oh my God, it was really painful to watch this. It actually took me around 4 days to watch the whole thing. He just kept on interrupting him. I understand he has this passion about exposing all the things that are wrong with Romania. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of things that aren't working in the system. But I think if you're doing an interview, the focus should be on interviewing the person in front of you and listening to them and getting their story, instead of listening to the first sentence that they say and then doing a 90-degree pivot onto something very unrelated, like a small connection. Yeah, he would just take these comments and just jump onto another topic, which was quite frustrating to watch, and just constantly interrupting Theodor all the time and going on these kind of very long rambling monologues. There's nothing wrong with the odd monologue, but I think when you're doing an interview, probably save the monologues for later. He has this fixation with OnlyFans. He brought up OnlyFans at least 4 or 5 times. I couldn't understand the relevance of it. So yeah, it was hard to watch. It felt like when you're learning to drive and you're in first gear and your car keeps stopping and then you go and then you keep stopping. It was hard to kind of grasp everything that was being talked about because Theodor would start explaining something and then he would be interrupted and then we would lose that thread. Luckily, things got better in the second half. He interrupted him a lot less. I'm just warning you, if you want to go watch the video yourself, go for it, go support him, but it literally took me 4 days to watch it. So first of all, they just talk a little bit about Theodor and his background and how since he was the age of 15, he's been applying to be in Eurovision. It's been a dream of his. He used to watch it with his family. So he's a big Eurovision fan. And you could see this a couple of times throughout the interview as well. He references Oviedo Anton, who was their disqualified contestant in 2016, which was a great entry, by the way. So yeah, he knows his stuff. He really is like a fan. Theodor entering wasn't just like this opportunistic thing to advance his career. Like obviously there's an element of wanting to show off who he is, but he is a super Eurovision fan. He really wanted to be there. It does seem like he's a relationship with the Watcher. I get the impression that the Watcher does some music production. They keep talking about songs that they've produced together, so there was quite a familiar relationship between them. The Watcher actually called some of his songs crappy and shitty, I think 3 times in the whole interview, which again is not something that I would do if I was interviewing someone. I wouldn't be like, oh, your song is shit. What do you think about that? Correct me if I misunderstood the translation, but that was what was written on the screen. So they go through the episode talking about several things that were wrong. First of all is Selection Nationale, where we know there were a couple of issues. There was that glitch where the LED completely broke and we got like an error test screen. Apparently there was the sound of USBs being plugged in and out during performances. And then they also discuss his budget for the national final. So he got €80. Now I presume that €80 is his money to do his staging. So if he has a dancer or anything like that, that's his like fund that he can take that out of. So that's not a lot of money. That's going to come up later because the cost for Romania's participation this year has already been exposed, and €80, a very, very, very tiny percentage of how much was spent this year. So that is relevant. We'll talk about the finances a little bit later on. So yeah, the quality of the national final was not really great. Everyone sounded very bad in the national final. I'm not sure if that was an artist issue or if it was a problem with the acoustics, but at the end of the day, it wasn't the most flashy, expensive national final that we had this year, that's for sure. So in case you didn't see the performance at Selection Nationale, I actually thought it was very entertaining. Lots of stuff going on, had a lot of energy, starting off with him as a nerd reading a book, and then these like sexy ladies come on and seduce him, and then there's some male dancers as well who go in the nip, and then there were like 2 different costume reveals and a girl falling off. So lots of fun, exciting, interesting stuff going on. I remember watching the Romanian national final thinking that this was the only one that kind of worked the whole way. His vocals sounded good. The performance was like entertaining to watch. For me, it was like an absolute no-brainer that he won. I really enjoyed Statues, which was another favorite in that national final, which I think got one of the most televotes in the end. But that looked and sounded horrendous. Really, that probably should have won if it had been performed well, but it wasn't performed well at all. So I actually think the base product that I had in the Selection Nationale was very good. Now Theodor talks here about how he saw a lot of feedback, people online or reactors. I know that he does watch reaction videos because he left a comment on my Selection Nationale national final video saying thank you very much, because I put him as my number 2. Even though it wasn't my second favorite song, I thought he was a really, really great magnetic performer. That's back then I obviously didn't know who was going to win at that point. So he was aware that, you know, a lot of people thought it was messy, me included. Although I enjoyed it, it was a bit frantic, a lot going on, quite difficult to know where you're meant to look. I wanted him just to edit it down, make it a bit more concise and clean, so we knew where we're meant to be looking at every single time. I didn't want him to get rid of all the fun stuff, just guide our eyes. Okay, we should be looking here, and then we go here, and then we go there. So it's not like 10 things happening and then you don't know which one to look at. And then Theodor also mentioned how he wanted to reduce the nudity a little bit because family friendly stuff. He also didn't want people to reduce the whole performance to just being about sex and nudity, because it's a lot more than that and it's got a lot more depth. So he was aware of all these things and he was trying to make all these changes. So after Selection Nationale, I remember actually being quite optimistic. It's like, wow, this guy's got loads of ideas. He's a great performer. He's a great singer. They're going to take this. They're going to do a little bit of magic on it. They've got a great artist this year who's got great ideas. And I still thought that this had the ingredients to qualify if it had been given a really clever upgrading of treatment. At this point now, Theodor goes in and starts to talk about what he initially wanted to do for the staging at Eurovision. Spoiler alert, none of his ideas were considered. So he wanted to start in a white shirt that almost looked like a straitjacket, with 2 guys with paint on their hands, like smearing black paint all over his body. So really striking, stark imagery to start the whole thing off, which really would have grabbed people's attention. He also wanted to include some stuff that had sign language in it as well, so certain words done in sign language. Now, that is an idea that's been done before. I still think it would have been interesting to watch on screen if it had been done in kind of a cool or fresh way. So Theodor puts these ideas to, I'm not sure if it's TVR or the delegation or both, but basically they get refused. They don't want it. You can't have paint on the stage. They don't want to do anything with chains. They don't want to do anything sexy. There seems to be this, like, I'm not sure if it's insecurity about their perception in Eurovision, or if they're thinking about the viewers or their jobs. I'm not sure what the reason for it was, but there seems to be this like slight conservative lean within the delegation that they don't want to do that. Their idea was to have him in a black kimono. I'm not making this up. They wanted him to have him in a black kimono sitting on a chair playing a guitar shaped as a hand. So they wanted him to be in a chair for 3 minutes not moving. Future Tom here. The reason they wanted this type of staging is that in the meantime, Theodor had gone on to Romanian radio and done an acoustic version of the song. Now the delegation heard this and they preferred it, and they were pushing for the final Eurovision performance to be 100% this acoustic version. Theodor himself didn't like this version. He preferred to keep the original. They want to do a full acoustic version of the song, and they basically demanded that. Theodor didn't want it. He said, it's not going to work because I'm going to be sitting on the stage doing an acoustic version, fake playing a guitar in a kimono for 3 minutes. It's going to be an absolute flop, which is correct. It would have been an absolute utter flop. It would have been so freaking boring, especially for a tele-only semi-final. We saw like the other ballads who did well. Lithuania, Estonia, Switzerland had really exciting, beautiful, energetic stage shows. They were moving around. They had gorgeous imagery. They didn't just sit in a stool and do nothing for 3 minutes wearing a kimono. So like, this was a terrible idea, and Theodor rightfully shot it down. Eventually they agreed on a 50-50 split of 50% acoustic version and 50% original, which was the final version that we saw at Eurovision. So now, to make things even worse, Theodor wasn't even invited to the meeting where they decided to make the song 100% acoustic. They'd had the meeting, told him about the result. Eventually they had a meeting together and Theodor was able to negotiate a 50-50. So it just sounds like there's so much fighting between him and the delegation in terms of creative ideas. And it sounds like most of the creative ideas from the delegation and TVR are just terrible. They also started having a go at him about what he was wearing. So you may have seen that he was wearing SpongeBob socks and Pokemon Pikachu socks at Eurovision, which I loved. I thought they're hilarious. I actually referenced that when I did the rehearsal video. I thought it was one of my favorite things. They didn't want that. They wanted him to wear Louis Vuitton sock, make it look very expensive. I'm wondering, Romanians can tell me below in the comments, is this like a thing TVR have where they want to look fancy, chic, Italian or something? I don't know, but it seems weird that they've got this almost like fashion insecurity. They don't want him to wear that, or they're worried about people saying he's gay because he was wearing a pink suit. Apparently that was a big controversy, that he was wearing a gay pink suit, which again is a little bit reductive. So these are all the issues that are going on with the staging and what song is going to be played on the stage as well. He's giving all his ideas and they're rejecting all of them. So his script that he'd all written was just all in the bin. He also came up with another idea where, okay, if we can't do the straitjacket with the paint and the nerd turning into a being liberated, then let's get a big heart and I'm going to smash it with a mallet. Again, another interesting idea, definitely better than sitting on a chair with a kimono for 3 minutes, but they also said no to that. And then it sounds like they kind of just shut him out. So in case you don't know the process, you have to submit your staging a month before Eurovision. You have to say, this is what we want this person here and that person there, we want this lighting, and then we do blah, 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 blah. And then the BBC or whoever the host broadcaster is does that staging with stand-ins and lets you see, okay, this is what the camera angle looks like, this is what the LED looks like, this is the person singing, what it sounds like. And then the delegation is allowed to look at that and go, okay, no, we want this to be brighter, we want this to be quicker, slower, we want more pans, etc. So they can give little notes. Another aspect of the process that Theodor explained was that when the BBC sends that to you, you're only allowed to look at it for a day. You get to look at what your show is going to be like, and that's it. They didn't show that to him. They refused. He kept on calling them, let me see what it looks like. They just said no. Eventually, 2 or 3 days later, when the deadline had passed to make any corrections, they showed him a video of it on their phone. So someone videoing a laptop, and then they showed it to him and he was like, this is an absolute and utter disaster. In any case, I totally support Theodor in this back and forth. He wanted to do something risky and dangerous. Romania were really, really low down in the odds. Everyone was saying they had no chance to qualify. Third in the running order, the worst qualification slot that you can possibly have. So they should have gone for something big and dangerous and risky because they needed to increase their chances of qualifying. So Theodor was definitely in the right here. That 50% acoustic version was sent to the EBU, which means that it couldn't be changed because there was a clause in his contract saying that that was the one he had to sing. So at this point, Theodor wants to record a music video. He references Oviedo Anton from 2016, who's disqualified but still had a music video. The delegation TVR say this isn't necessary, it's a waste of money. So Theodor uses his own money to go and film this secretly himself. So he films the video over 2 days using some drones, and if you haven't seen the music video, it's actually pretty cool. The music video is a lot of the ideas that he pitched to the delegation in the first place. The straitjacket, the chains, this paint all over him, these hands. It's also got a cool moment. You can see the dancer with like a voodoo doll, she moves the leg and then Theodor's leg moves. It's a simple idea, it's pretty cool. That also could have been done on the stage. It would have been quite camp and kitsch, but it definitely would have been a lot more interesting than what they ended up sending, which was very, 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 very boring. So look, Theodor had lots of great ideas, and you can see a lot of his vision in the music video, which I think is significantly better than the actual stage show that happened at Eurovision. Again, I'll leave a link to that music video in the pinned comment. There's a lot of links in the pinned comment that you can watch Once you finish watching this, don't watch them yet, please. He uploads the video to YouTube. He sends the unlisted link to the higher ups at TVR and they don't like it. They don't like the blood, they don't like the paint, they don't like the chains, they think it's too naughty. Even though Theodor says Germany had like waterful of blood in their video, whereas all Theodor has is like a little bit of like blood on his t-shirt. And they say that he needs to take it down, and then they start threatening his mother with a fine of 400,000 euros. So this part isn't resolved. I'm not sure what happened because the video is up. But the key things to take away from this are that Theodor is having really good ideas. They're interesting, they're fun. Look, not all of them work, but at least he's putting forward things that could potentially work. And if he was working with a creative director who was equally ambitious and creative, those two people together could come up with loads of things, pick the best ideas and then edit them down, and they might actually come up with something interesting. Now that's what I thought was gonna happen. Selection Nationale was really fun, but a bit too wild and messy. I thought they were gonna neaten it up, but keep that kind of wild, badass feeling of it. And instead what happened was the whole thing just got diluted down into this like very boring mess. So we can see that there's problems here, that the artist is trying to do the best thing and then there's people blocking him at every single step. Can't have these ideas, they want him in kimonos, they want to change the song into an acoustic version despite the fact that it's a televote only semi-final, which is crazy. They want him wearing Louis Vuitton socks, they want to take away the dancers, they want to take away any interaction with anybody. It's just so much blocking from TVR or the delegation against what he wants to do. So we're getting an insight into what has happened in this situation, and then we can look back and say, well, did this potentially happen with WRS and with Roxanne and also with the Humans and Esther Peony? Because we've seen this consistently bad decision making now since 2018. Now at this point, let's draw a comparison. Can you imagine the Swedish delegation having a closed door meeting deciding to change the Swedish song without consulting the artist? Would they be shooting down all of the artist's ideas? Would they be refusing to put forward a music video? Now sometimes Sweden don't have music videos. Lorraine didn't have it this year with Tattoo. But then again, Theodor's trying to come up with solutions because they're last in the odds to qualify. So he's trying to come up with a way to build a pipe and try and gain some traction for the song. So you don't need a music video, but when you're in a dire situation, maybe you do need to do something a little bit differently. And this is where I think other delegations who I think show a more consistent pattern in having their finger on the pulse would have made different decisions in this circumstance. So this is the point where Theodor finally gets to see what his staging is going to look like, and he says it's an absolute disaster. None of the ideas that he put forward have been considered. It's something even worse than what we saw on the Eurovision stage, but he basically had to work within that because you can't make big changes that late. So at this point, he has to stick with the staging that Romania submitted, and he's basically kind of screwed. There's only so much he can do. He gives the performance all he can. They had those LEDs with the lava, which didn't make any sense, and the woman in the big white muumuu, which didn't make any sense, and then this woman lying in this big pile of lava blood, which didn't make any sense. The whole thing was just wild and wacky and very confusing. And if you compare that to the music video, which although some of the ideas didn't work, some of them did, I still understood the concept of the song from the music video. This woman is controlling him, he's bound, he doesn't have control over everything that's happening. Just really simple, clever imagery that got across the meaning of the song to me in an entertaining and clear way. So that's what Theodor was able to do on his own. And then you look at the final performance that the delegation and TVR chose, and it's just confusing, weird, boring. He's sitting on a chair for the first minute. It's just terrible, terrible decision making. So it's sad to see that he's been so sabotaged by some of the people around him. Again, we don't know which particular people it is. Theodor says some of the people in the delegation he really liked and he would stay in touch with and were really nice, but it sounds like the higher up people, the decision makers, just wouldn't budge. Okay, at this point I'm going to stop with the interview. Hopefully I've summarized it as best as I can. Again, because it was so rambling with so many interruptions and tangents and the subtitles weren't clear, it was quite hard to follow. That is my understanding of what was discussed. Again, if I'm wrong, please let me know. It was really confusing and difficult to watch. That's the best that I could do in trying to sum it all up. Again, the key thing we're focusing on here is what is going wrong with the Romanian delegation, because we're looking for patterns at why have they really gone downhill recently. Now, let's talk about brighter times. So Romania weren't always this bad. So they joined the competition in 93, a little bit slowly. Between 2000 and 2010, they were in the top 10 5 times, including 3 top 4 finishes. So that's really good results. 2005 they came third, 2006 They came fourth with Mihai Tristiari, who never let go of that. He's kept on submitting songs to Eurovision. He's obsessed. And then Paula Selling and Ovi in 2010, the year that Lena won, they came third. So they used to be absolutely amazing. The other really shocking thing about Romania is, since the semi-finals started in 2004, they qualified every single year up until 2018. And I remember this because I remember before I started this channel in 2019, anytime I was watching a semi-final prediction video, everyone would always put Romania in straight away because Romania just qualified every single year. So up until 2018, there were 4 countries who had a 100% qualification record: Russia, Romania, Azerbaijan, and Ukraine. These were 4 powerhouse countries who were just amazing in Eurovision all the time. And really strangely enough, 3 of those countries all lost their qualification records in 2018. Russia, Azerbaijan, and Romania all non-qualified in 2018. But up until then, Romania qualified every single year. It was just something that always happened. They always sent something kind of very cool and iconic. Even in the 2010s, when they weren't getting top 10 as much, they still had really iconic songs like Mandinga singing Zalale, Cesar, It's My Life. That's still a really, really iconic song. Paula Selling and Ovin came back in 2014, Yodel It in 2017, and then Oviedo Ant in 2016 I think would have qualified as well. So they really had a good recipe, they had a good formula. I don't know what happened in 2018 that things started going downhill. Even the Humans, who didn't qualify then, they still came 11th. So I remember thinking in 2018, okay, this is Romania's first ever non-qualification, but they were right on the cusp. Interestingly, Azerbaijan came 11th in the other semi-final that year. So those 2 countries lost their 100% qualification records only by 1 place. But yeah, it was interesting that things took such a sharp turn. And then Esther Pieni in 2019, I thought that song was great. I know there was lots of controversy in the national final, which I think is a little bit unfair. Blogs takes a lot of amount of criticism for that, despite the fact that quite a few people didn't vote for Laura Breton, which was the local favourite. And really, that was TVR's decision to give 6/7 of the points to the jury and 1/7 to the televote. That was not Blog's decision, that was TVR's decision. So if you don't like that, really TVR is to blame for 2019 if you wanted Laura Breton to win. I loved Esther Pieni. I thought the song was amazing. I think it was in my top 3. That staging was absolute hot mess. So many bad decisions, weird camera cuts, shots of dancers being blocked by the crowd, flames coming in way too early and in the quiet parts so you could hear the sound of them as well. That whole video I went through, I'm actually going to show you a list of all the things I went through for the 3 minutes and wrote down every single mistake that I saw in 3 minutes. I literally had to pause the video every 10 seconds. I was like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Just distracting. And as someone who loved that song, I remember watching it going, I can't get absorbed into this performance because there's so many bad decisions here which are distracting me from what's going on. The LEDs didn't make any sense, they didn't match the song. It was really hard to get the story of it if you were watching for the first time because none of it made sense. It was like this weird Addams Family Transylvania feel with these like fantasy LED screensavers from Zelda. None of it made sense. It was just a total mess. Roxanne 2021, again, that was my number 2 that year. Total disaster, awful decision making. They gave her staging that she couldn't sing. She clearly wasn't able to manage it voice wise. They didn't adjust it to account for that. And then afterwards, someone, I can't remember who, started blaming her, either the head of delegation or someone from TVR, blaming her, saying she was too young, too inexperienced. So yeah, look, there's been a consistent trend now of several years of TVR making really, really, really bad decisions. Let's go through some comments that people left on my semi-final 2 analysis video. So some of these are from Romanians, some of them are just from non-Romanian Eurofans. Here's one from Barista Nathan talking about the staging. If Romania had a better staging director, I'm pretty sure this would be the first genuine non-qualifier ever. Roxanne, Esther Pieni, the Humans were all artists quite close to qualification. I think each had pretty lackluster to outright harmful staging packages. So I totally agree with all of those. This is the thing, the artists every year are really excellent. And again, Theodor is another great artist. Really great singing, really enthusiastic, really cares about this, wants to do well, wants to represent his country. So for me, the problem is not the artist. Now, I will say Roxanne had some singing issues. She didn't have the strength and power in her voice to run around. But for me, that's a delegation problem because they should have found that out a long time ago and changed the staging, especially with Roxanne, who was chosen in 2020. This shouldn't have been a surprise that she wasn't able to manage the staging. They've been working with her for 2 years. How could they not have worked out that she wasn't able to handle that staging so late? I totally agree. The staging has just not been good, and for me, that is not an artist issue, especially when we get this insight into seeing that Theodor's ideas are being rejected constantly and being replaced with much worse ones. Okay, we have another comment here from Sylvia Elena. So she's Romanian and she thinks it would be good to pull out for 1 year, maybe rethink strategies, invest into more dedicated people. I saw this year that TVR spent €380,000 for the Eurovision participation, and I'm sorry, but what? Definitely we did not see this investment into Theodor staging, so most people know that it's actually using Eurovision to do some stuff. Allegedly. Now look, I didn't go too much into this in this video because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know all the ins and outs, but yes, this image was going around on Twitter. This is a bill for €400,000 for the cost. Now we know that Theodor was given an allowance of €80 for Selection Nationale. Obviously hosting the national final costs something as well, but then he wasn't given money for the music video apparently, from what I understood. So where is the rest of this money going? The staging didn't look expensive to me at all. So yeah, there is a slight discrepancy when you look and see this cost €400,000 and then you're looking at the product and you're like, this looks like it cost €50,000 max. Now obviously there's hotels and flights and stuff as well, but still it's kind of confusing, like where did this money go? How is it so expensive to have such a mediocre show? So we've got another comment here from Romanian Flavius9722. The thing about Romania is that TVR treats the contest like a meh thing, and the national selection became a very boring process where no one submits something interesting or original, and also TVR has low viewing figures for years. They made a good move in 2020 and 2021 by going internally and going for the big labels, but they overdid it with the performance and they went back to that boring selection. And also public perception in Romania about Eurovision is either people never heard of it but don't care, or they think it's a mean contest full of camp and boring songs. So a couple of points here. I think that actually Global Records was 20, 21 and 22, because I believe that WRS was also with a big record company, which I think was Global Records. But this is the really good point here. I remember doing my Roxanne's 5-song national final reaction video in 2020, and that video totally blew up. It's one of my most viewed videos ever. I remember Romanians were so into Eurovision that year. There were so many comments. People were really, really excited. I remember thinking at the time, these 5 songs that were submitted were absolutely amazing. They literally sounded like 5 album songs to me. Like that for me is one of the best national finals we've ever had. If you never saw it, you need to download those 5 songs. They were all brilliant. At that point I was thinking, wow, Romania is really going to win Eurovision really soon. This is absolutely and utterly incredible. So it's weird to think that we've gone so downhill in 3 years. Like that 2020, if you'd asked me, will Romania win in the next 10 years? I would have said yes. They found this incredible recipe where they've got this super cool high production song that's super modern and fresh and international. And then what the hell happened? And then Alcohol You was the song that was chosen, which I didn't think was the best song, but it was one of the favorites. I think it was top 10 in the odds at that point. It was Roxanne's favorite song of the 5. So this is another insight. Let's look at another comment from 001871. Romanian here, TVR is underfunded and corrupt. That's why Global Records pulled out this year. So Global Records would have been with WRS. WRS probably invested in Eurovision on his own with some help from his music label, but to be honest, his song was a bit of a leftover from Global Records. It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't what they usually produce. A bit of context, Global Records is the largest independent music label in Central and Eastern Europe. It was established more or less thanks to INA, I'm not sure what that is, and the success some of their composers had in the noughties and the teens. In 2020, TVR was accused of only giving the ESC ticket to a large music label. Yes, you guessed it, Global Records. A lot of independent, smaller local composers complained. I guess it was rather unfair and corrupt. To be honest, Selection Nationale has become a S-word. So yeah, look, they found a formula that kind of worked. I think maybe they need to consider going back, because 2020, 2021, 2022, really great songs every single year. They qualified obviously last year. It's quite confusing because we don't know which of the years where the delegation are influencing. Were they successful last year because the delegation and TVR were shut out? Did WRS take complete control and say, this is what I'm going to do, you guys can't do anything, and that's why it worked last year? Or is something else going on? We also need to consider that last year Romania cheated. They were part of the jury scandal, which was about swapping votes with other jurors. So to add insult to injury, not only is this team not having success, but they were also involved in cheating last year and they were caught. Instead of saying, look, we cheated, we apologize, they kind of like doubled down and said, no, we're going to fight this. They held a TV show where they're talking about were they going to leave or not, which apparently was just all for show, a little bit of wounded pride or something. So there's just so much messiness happening on so many levels. And for me, this looks like it is predominantly TVR and the delegation. I don't know which is which. Again, I apologize if the delegation are angels and haven't done anything wrong, but with so much murkiness about what's going on, and Theodor is obviously not allowed to go into detail and name certain people, we can't pin the blame exactly where it probably should be. Okay, so what are some potential solutions? Well, one thing is there is another broadcaster in Romania called ProTv. So let's go to a comment by Aruela. About Romania, I've seen a couple of people suggesting ProTv, a private broadcaster that could take TVR's place, something that I would hope for the future since TVR is lacking in every aspect. 2016, when TVR did not pay its debt to the EBU and were disqualified, ProTv offered to step in, and EBU basically said, we can't because you aren't part of the EBU Broadcasting Union. And I actually went and checked the EBU affiliates this year, and ProTv still aren't part of that. So that is why ProTv is not eligible. But let's go to another comment here from Neko. I talked to my partner about TVR, he's Romanian. So TVR is by ratio the smallest national broadcaster out of any of the Eurovision countries. It's very unpopular as a channel in general. By viewership, it's 9 times smaller than ProTv, which is the channel that hosts all the popular shows like The Voice or Romania's Got Talent. It seems logical that ProTv, the most popular channel that already has competition shows and a big audience, should be in charge of Eurovision, and they'll probably have connections as well. But TVR basically only has Eurovision for it and won't give up that contract. And also, as we saw earlier, they're the only ones who are eligible because they're the only ones in that EBU Broadcasting Union. The participation fees are scaled for population. Romania is 19 million, so they're presumably paying a higher rate for extremely low viewership right now. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't know if we'd see an improvement if ProTv took over, but whatever TVR is doing right now doesn't seem to be sustainable. With all the information we have, and again, I fully admit that we don't have it all because some things are just not made public, this really does look like a TVR problem. Just bad decision making, being blocked from the top with a lot of ideas, not having a clear strategy. The thing that was working in 2020 and 2021, why was that stopped? It seems like there was a little bit of outdraw from local composers, but really it was the system that was working the best at the time. Has it been better to have a more open national final process? I don't know. You know, Romania's really gone downhill. Like I said, they were so strong at the start, and then there was that small blip where they didn't qualify the first time, and then I thought they were on the rise with 2020, that incredible national final, but now things have just gone really downhill again. I don't think that they're going to withdraw. From what we can see from those comments, it appears that TVR really need Eurovision. It's one of their big pulls, one of their big special exclusive things that they have. They're also the only one who's eligible to keep it as well. It actually seems very similar to the RTE situation, where RTE is not willing to give up Eurovision either because it's 8 hours of extremely cheap TV when you compare to what it normally costs for them to produce a show. So there's no way the RT is going to give it up, even though they don't really care about it. They don't really have a good system. So there's lots of parallels to draw between TVR and RT. I can take my glass off now. In any case, I really hope that Romania doesn't leave. I love them in the competition, but I want them to succeed. I want them to go back to the success that they had in the noughties and teens. Now, that doesn't mean replicating their previous strategy. It's quite apparent that strategy doesn't work anymore. But they've got great artists, and I think their songs are great every year. I don't think they're sending absolute crap. So they've got to come up with a system that doesn't stifle their success so much. It just seems like behind the scenes, there are so many barriers that don't seem logical or practical, that's really stifling Romania's ability to do well. There just doesn't seem like there's people who are passionate or understand the competition or know what's best for the artists and for Romania to succeed. And there's like these insecurities about how Romania is perceived and not wanting to upset possibly conservative people in the country. I'm not sure. I think Romania really needs to go back to the drawing board and come up with a strategy that's specific to them. What do they need to do to get the best entry possible? They're going to have to do some damage control, because I think a lot of artists now would just not want to represent Romania. Seeing what happens when you go behind the curtain and have so many people not letting you express yourself, I think there's a lot of artists who just aren't going to want to sign up for that. So look, they're in a really precarious situation right now. The last 2 years have been bad. Hopefully this is their low point and they're going to start building and hopefully get themselves better for next year. But Romania is definitely one of the countries that I'm rooting for. I hope that they can find a way to get some success and to turn things around. But right now, from what we've seen from this interview, this behind the scenes look into what's going on, it just looks really, 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 really bad. Let me know what you think. If you're Romanian, please leave a comment in the comment section down below telling me anything that I said wrong or anything that you want to add or any other insights to this. I want to give a couple of shout outs. Thank you to Alan B, Johan K, Luciano G, and Pal N for supporting me on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you so much for keeping me caffeinated. And then also a huge thank you to Sonia and Kat W for supporting me on PayPal. Thank you so much. Your support is really, really appreciated for keeping me going. If you want to support me on my content creator journey, trying to create content all the way until next season starts, I'll leave some links in the description. But as always, thank you just for watching the video. If you like this analysis video and you want to see some more, I'll leave a couple of them for you here. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and thanks so much for watching. See you in another Eurovision analysis video very soon. Goodbye.